I was doing a bit of reading and came across a existentialist by the name of Rene Descartes. He really determined the thinking of the Western world. And he had one quote that I think you'd be familiar with: "I think, therefore I am." And from there, I suppose, even Western psychology, they emphasize a lot of importance on our thoughts. And with the importance on our thoughts, is start to believe the things that we're thinking. One thing that I learned in 2009 was William, the facilitator, said, "Our thoughts and feelings aren't real. Everything is an illusion."
So, Trevor, welcome to my podcast. And why don't you introduce yourself? What encouraged you to be on this podcast? Like, what was the inspiration to be here? Why?
John, it's been a very interesting journey. My most significant memories were from when I was about 9, 10 years of age, and I knew I was different. And from there, I was in a very strict religious upbringing, and that heavily influenced my life and has held me in good stead now. So from an early age of about early 20s, I took an interest in Taoism and Chinese Buddhism. And I had a friend that was interested in it, so we talked about it a lot. And that was the beginning of knowing that I could be more than what I was at that moment.
Yeah, wow. When you speak to your childhood journey of a strict religious upbringing, like, what was it? What was your religious upbringing?
I was brought up a Seventh-day Adventist.
Yeah. Okay.
And, they went to church on Saturdays, so I wasn't able to join into sport with my friends at school on Saturdays. We didn't eat meat or drink alcohol or smoke. So it was quite a different lifestyle at that stage. And so, I felt at that stage that, it was happening for a reason.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that you mentioned that at the end there. Like, we know when we're in it, it can feel like this is all that I have. I feel trapped and stuck here. But then when you like peel back the layers and look at it from that bird's eye view of that wisdom, you go, oh, wow, there's actually some real gems of wisdom there that I've plucked to bring into my adulthood.
Oh, look, it's. Can I tell us a quick story, John?
Please. Yeah.
3.5 years ago, my dad died. And anyway, prior to that, I've been to see my dad, and I hadn't seen much of him because my mother was quite controlling, and we had a difference because she knew I couldn't be controlled, and so I was restricted in seeing my dad. And anyway, Dad was now in a nursing home, and Mum actually encouraged me to go and visit him. And 4 weeks after I visited, he died.
Wow.
And so he was in New Zealand, so I made the trip back to New Zealand again just 4 weeks later for the funeral. And Mum insisted that I stay at the family home, which was a huge breakthrough. And through the conversations in the few days after the funeral, Mum was a bit sort of remorseful of our strained relationship, and she started to apologise to me.
Wow, Trevor.
And, at that point, I just realised where she was coming from, but also realised my own journey. And in fact, that every single thing that happened in my life brought me to this point now.
Yeah, wow.
And so, the leaving New Zealand, which was quite restrictive in some ways, to have opportunities here, I couldn't have even dreamt of having, John. I've been places, travelled to places around the world that I couldn't have imagined as, when did I leave there? When I was 29, I left New Zealand, and I couldn't have imagined doing things I've done in my life. And so I then turned to my mother and says, look, you've been the perfect mother. You've been a pivotal part in making me the person I am today. So even the stuff that you consider as bad has actually worked to create me today. And at that point, she realised and actually broke down crying, and she said, thank you so much.
Wow. Wow, what a healing in a family system, Trevor. That's amazing.
Look, it's the whole world is healing, and I went through, of course, my own healing process, and I think at that point I helped my mum through her healing process.
Yeah, beautiful. So in that wisdom of being able to hold the past and the present, what is it? What are the tools that you have that you've used to look back and go, yeah, that was all perfect. Like, that was what happened to me was perfect.
One of my favorite sayings, John, is everything is in perfection. And that's been with me for many years, and I'm not sure when I picked it up. But look, I've been in business, John. I've worked hard as a cabinet maker when I was a young fella, and then I had my own business for many years in technology, and struggled with that. So I know what struggle is all about. And at one point in 2009, I went and did a coach's training course, which is over 12 months. And once a month, we'd actually meet in person to go through some exercises together. And it was a class of 140. And so in there, we found that basically everybody in that class was broken to a degree. And then we sort of realized, well, it's not actually broken. It is just the process of evolving to who we truly are. So when I see people, I don't see broken people. I see people just evolving into who they can be. Tools are very interesting because, I suppose one of the influences I had, and it was probably about 2010, 2011, doing a bit of reading and came across a existentialist by the name of Rene Descartes. Have you heard of him before? He really determined the thinking of the Western world. And he had one quote that I think you'd be familiar with: "I think, therefore I am." And from there, I suppose, even Western psychology, they emphasize a lot of importance on our thoughts. And with the importance on our thoughts, is start to believe the things that we're thinking. And many tests have been done to actually produce some pretty compelling evidence to show that just because I think I'm an astronaut doesn't make me an astronaut. Just because I have feelings of guilt doesn't make me guilty.
Yeah.
So one thing that I learned in 2009 was William, the facilitator, said our thoughts and feelings aren't real. And, and it took a while to process that, to be honest, John. Then I did some more study and I thought I wanted to be a better coach. And then I studied with a guy in the US, and that was just a 3-month course, and it was online. And so that was my foray into online communication. And that, once again, was a huge shift for me. And when I say huge, it really disjointed me.
Right.
Because in there I got that everything is an illusion. And I embraced that, but it was very rough. It was very raw, and communicating it was shocking. It's very hard to see someone or speak to someone that actually is very caught up in reality now and what they think is real, and to tell them it's all an illusion. Sorry, John, you wanted to say something?
No, I love that. I love that you spoke to that. The piece when you can do so much inner work and you can move so much into your own self-actualization and be aware of that your thoughts and feelings. There's an illusionary component to all of that. And how do you talk to someone who's in that old paradigm?
It is a process, to be honest, John. And I really come down to 4 fundamentals in life. I try to make it very, very simple. And it came from because I studied, I suppose, Sanskrit through my interest in Hinduism. And when we start to look at some of the quotes of the Buddha, we can start to see some absolutely amazing wisdom there. But we don't always understand the backstory or the meaning coming through. And so studying some of these words, I'm not able to speak Sanskrit at all, but I just know the words and what they mean and that sort of thing. So it starts to add another layer of understanding of what the wisdom was all about. And from there, I bring that into my mentoring, and I've specialized in ADHD because it's one of the most difficult areas to be in. Okay, so from there, I believe there's only 4 things, and one is appreciation. Now, we just do not appreciate enough. We don't appreciate other people, which leaves feelings of insecurity, all sorts of other issues. The next one is acceptance. If we accept people as they are, we're not judging them. So non-judgment's another big part of integrating and being in the community and fitting in without creating massive waves of discord. And no attachment was the last one, John. I had to think about that for a moment. But and there's many schools of thought on that, and we still can say I would like a car. But if that car were to be stolen, who am I to say it's not going to be a better result at the end?
Yes. This is beautiful. I love you speaking to this, Trevor. And how do these pillars tie in with your coaching with ADHD?
Look, I've discovered with ADHD that people with ADHD are really they've got a different way of thinking. They're wired differently, but there's a very, very active mind, overactive mind.
Yeah.
So whenever this overactivity comes in, I had a client the other day that was really worried about his business, and he wanted to. He's not getting paid on time, and that sort of thing. And so all this activity while he was doing the painting was going on at 100 miles an hour.
Mm.
And at that point, he is just getting so wound up, but he actually had taken no action. And I always talk about taking the first obvious step. And with an overactive mind, they're thinking 10 steps ahead. And because they're thinking 10 steps ahead, they are in overwhelm. But when you say just stop and just do the first step and see what happens, because when you take the first step, you don't even know what the result is and what the subsequent second step's going to be. And so you have what I call, have a end result that you're looking at. I want to get paid on time. And the first step is just to communicate with the customer. Hey, notice you haven't paid. Is there a problem? Whatever you've got to say, but it's just the first step. And the next steps may be having to make some allowances to rearrange something. But, first just take that one step.
Mm.
And for all of us, at some stage we've had to take a step to get to where we are now.
I love that. And I really hear it gives people that have that diagnosis and feel a bit powerless around their diagnosis, power, right? So like this guy that was stuck in that overwhelm and that loop think of, now what do I need to do? How do I do it? Running 1,000 miles an hour. And you've come in there with the clarity and gone, cool, right? Just stop. And what's the first thing that you need to do?
Yes. And look, he's been a great client to have. It's such a rewarding field to be in. He's one of these guys. He'd actually been through a pretty traumatic event where he worked with his father for many years, and then his father died quite suddenly, and so he was quite traumatized by that. He already had a diagnosis of ADHD, but prior to that, and then at the time of his father dying, he got pretty overwhelmed by that, and so the partnership he was in and her son left him.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing that. How do emotions play into that dynamic of ADHD? Because like what I hear is like grief, right? Suppressed grief or unfinished words or something else that's played into there. Based on your opinion of what you've experienced with your clients and your life in general, how would you say that grief plays into someone with ADHD?
That's an interesting thing because quite often a common diagnosis with ADHD is this trauma in their lives.
Yeah.
So there's like a PSTD running in the background, and quite often they have a secondary diagnosis of some sort, and it's going to be depression. It's going to be, for my case, because I've got ADHD, it was actually dyslexia.
Right.
So it's been an amazing process to see how people's brains work. And they are different, and we assume that their brains are working the same as ours, and so we're very not accepting of someone that's different. It's a matter of being in a group of everybody smoking, and you're not smoking, and you feel like the odd man out. They look at you like you're the odd man out, and there's many instances where you can actually experience that sort of being different. And that difference is quite often leading to them being very frustrated. It brings up high levels of anxiety because they can't express themselves, they can't process things, and it just builds up and builds up. And with kids, they just have a total meltdown. I was visiting a family yesterday afternoon, and the 6-year-old girl just totally lost it, and it was over the fact that she couldn't find her shoes. So all of a sudden we had gone from getting ready to go out to throwing toys and things that she loved that were hers out of just total frustration as to why she can't deal with it. She was offered help. People were helping to look for those shoes, and she just went into total overwhelm.
Yeah, right. So I'm hearing this overwhelm and then frustration that they're not getting the result that they want straight away.
Yes. And it's interesting, there's some really good books out on ADHD, and I think one of the ones that come to mind was ADHD 2.0. So if anybody wants to know a little bit about it and know if they've got ADHD a little bit more, that might be helpful.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Trevor. That's fantastic. I think there's a lot of people that might look at it. I mean, back in the day when mental health was starting to come into the mainstream, I know for myself, like, I'll look at therapy as I'm not going to go to therapy because I think there's something wrong with me, right? I don't want to tell anybody that I'm going to therapy because I don't want to be appear broken, right? And then with the more diagnoses of ADHD and various personality disorders or character disorders, there's been this, yeah, like, oh, there's something that's actually wrong with you and you're damaged and you need to stay away from me. But when in reading books and understanding what the mechanisms for action are, or just understanding that this is another human being, that just their brains are wired differently based on whatever their childhood was and or epigenetically, that you can relate to them. You just need to know how to relate to them, right?
Yeah, look, the activity of our own minds actually prevents us from relating to the other person. In this instance, where I'm on a podcast with you, and thoughts are starting to run through my mind, is to actually still listen to what you're saying, John,
Yeah.
and be present and understand what you're saying rather than just rattling off what's going through my head.
And so that's that discipline. How have you learned that discipline, Trevor?
Being aware of it. One of
Being
my
aware.
things that I had on my phone, on the screensaver, above all, is awareness. And you start to go into the depth of what awareness means. It's pivotal on everything that we do, basically.
And how have you
I've often,
cultivated that over time? Because I hear the word, and everyone, I do hear that word getting thrown around. It's awareness. It's build awareness around it, you know. But then how have you, like, I hear what you said just then, like you're listening to what I'm saying, and there's all these thoughts going on in your head, and you still replied to my question, even though there's all this background chatter going on. So, like, what's aside from the daily discipline of like looking at your phone, like what other, like, is there breath work? Is there like environment changes? Like, what have you done to cultivate this awareness for you?
John, it's an interesting question, and can be a long answer, but in short, that I've spent a long time meditating. And the Eastern influence on my life to spend time meditating has a huge impact on my life. And we all have mind chatter. It's a matter of reducing that mind chatter and reducing it enough so I can actually be present enough to actually listen to what John's saying. And everybody's different. Once again, just let me sort of cover off on that. And you go, oh, well, what type of meditation did
Yeah,
I
I was
do?
about to ask that. Yeah.
Look, I've done several, and the first one was transcendental meditation for me many, many years ago. And that worked perfectly for me. And since then, I've discovered other, breathing type meditations, etc. And even a narrated or a meditation where you're guided through the meditation. And some people need that because what we're doing basically with the breath work, we're watching our breath, is distracting our mind from the thought to concentrating on our breath. We're listening to a guidance through the meditation to actually distract the mind. Transcendental, part of my transcendental was imagining all my thoughts going out the top of my head.
Mm,
And so even though that's an activity of the mind, it was reduced activity compared to my thoughts. And one of the things I realized later in the piece, John, was that how many bits of information do our eyes take in per second?
I have no idea. Tell me.
34 billion bits of information per second. And
Wow.
so one of the things to slow the mind and reduce the activity is just to close your eyes. It's one of the highest senses response is our eyes. I see the grass in front of the truck going by there, the people over there. It's all happening while I'm talking to you. And if I close my eyes and I don't have those distractions,
Wow. Wow. That's really powerful. Just that one alone is really powerful. Just
yeah,
being able to close my eyes, I know for me, if I'm starting to feel like a little bit of overwhelm, or I really want to tune into what someone's saying, like, yeah, I'll close my eyes just by default. But if
yep,
someone doesn't know how to do that, like if they're in an environment where, like, I'm so overwhelmed right now, like just this simple act of, even unless you're driving a car, of course, or heavy machinery, but closing your eyes and going, what is it that I want to listen to? What is it that I need to be attuned to right now? And it might even be just yourself, right? Am I hungry right now? Right? Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I depressed? What's the sensation in my body?
it's interesting, John. And I relate to what you're saying there. But sometimes we're trying to replace what's going on with something else.
Right. Tell me more about
You
this.
know, And and this comes from the East. It's to replace it with nothing. The Buddha talked about desire, or the attachment to desire being the cause of our suffering. And don't get me wrong, suffering's great, because I tell you what, that's when we learn the most. That desire, and that attachment to desire is it just leads our lives, to get a
Mm,
new car, to new relationships, to doing something. And it is just that constant activity led by desire. And,
beautiful.
just,
I'd love to jump in there when you speak about desire. I want to pull in the ADHD component here. So, in the context of desire, would a person that's got that highly tuned, that ADHD, be looking to avoid their frustration, or looking to avoid their grief, or looking to not be present with whatever's going on for them?
yes, especially with children, it's a very noticed. There's a high level of gaming use amongst kids with ADHD.
Right, right.
And of course, parents get frustrated by that, because we have a paradigm where this is not acceptable. The gaming is a distraction. They get caught up in the game. They're not having to deal with the needs of going to brush your teeth or go to school, or the things they don't really want to do. So it's a distraction for their minds.
Yeah, that's an interesting paradigm to speak to too. The concept of gaming, and like for me, like I didn't get my first phone until I was like in my mid-20s, but I was
Right.
raised around computers most of my life. My dad was a programmer and he used to write games. So I was playing games when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I also used to get out of the house and like ride a bike and do other things because the computer was tethered to like the television at home,
Yep. Yep.
and games could take like an hour to load. Like a bit like cassette in a machine, and then you had to like do that. And then as the technology got faster, the speed at which I could get the high from the game also increased as well. Like I spent hours and hours and hours on World of Warcraft and all kinds of online gaming.
Yes. Yes.
And for me, like that really, it was a great distraction from my reality of working in the corporate world. It pushed me into a place of not stepping into like my purpose or what I was really here to do, or and partners as well. Like I would ignore conversations with partners, thinking about what I would be doing in the game next, right? So I guess my question for you would be, yeah, like where do you think we're going with all of this, like the technology and diagnoses like ADHD?
John, you touched on a couple of very important things. Where are we going with it? That's a really open-ended question. We have significant AI now, where it's actually being held back from society at the moment. Our phones are capable of so much more. We don't need to touch our phones to have something. We can just move our hands over it, and it'll start doing what we want it to do. The technology is just amazing. Is the evolution of our species to actually not exist anymore in our human form? I don't
Mm.
know. And once again, I'm not attached to how it is, but I do enjoy the human form. I get a lot of joy out of the human form, and in many different ways.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned earlier was purpose, and that's one of the things that I think with probably 90% of the people I meet are struggling to find their purpose. Purpose is one of those things. Once you've found it, everything else really becomes secondary. And you can be without the big house and the Porsche and all that sort of thing. If you got your purpose and you feel as though you're being fulfilled, and quite often that involves in helping other people. There was an Eastern guru that says there's no higher purpose than to be a service to others. And if we can find our way individually to be able to be of service to humanity, I think that we're going to be really, really well fulfilled.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. And for you, how did you discover your purpose? Like you left New Zealand in 29, but how did you discover your purpose? Would you say that you're on purpose at the moment?
Yes,
Great. So how did you
yes.
get there? How did you get there?
Through the school of hard knocks, through my own struggle, through my own suffering.
Yeah.
And I don't, I think I had an easy life in a lot of ways, but I suppose mentally and emotionally, I struggled for a fair while, and I was very resilient. I had broad shoulders. It's been brought up in our society. For the guy, toughen up. Be a man. I suppose in 2009, the search for my purpose intensified. I'd been sailing at that point for about 14 years. I'd lived on a yacht. okay, for
Wow.
14 years. And I was a mortgage broker at that point in my life. So I've been a mortgage broker for 13 of those 14 years. And I found I was not living my purpose. Why am I doing this work? I was helping people. They were accumulating more wealth through, I was specializing in investment property financing. So they're accumulating all this wealth, but they weren't happy. And so got me questioning, what is it that makes us truly happy? And that's when I launched into doing my coaches training in 2009.
Wow. So what I hear is you did something for a while, and then you felt an itch. There was like something that was there that you knew that there was more of for you.
Yes,
Right.
definitely, 100%.
Mm.
And the even in that process of going from 2009 to here, I was thought of at times as being crazy because I was just having all this new input, and I didn't know how to deal with the new input.
Mm.
And it took a long time to process it. And it's getting stuff, and it's not even quite often translatable in the logical sense. So
Yeah.
the rational mind will struggle with dealing with some of the information that comes. And I'd say, to be honest, John, it's probably only in the last 4 years that I can articulate what I'm doing now to the degree that I am.
Yeah, wow. When you were speaking about all this information that came to you, could you give me a bit more detail into that?
The coaches training was pretty straightforward. Excuse me. And from there, the eastern side was really what started to bend my mind. And I was one of those people that had seen The Matrix back in, was it 1999? So that was playing along in the background. But certainly the eastern side of it, really, really sort of, it broke my mind
Mm.
to the point where that I gave up everything that I had believed in the past. And I then got to the point where I had no attachment to what I believed,
Right.
because
And
what
if
I'd seen, sorry,
Yeah, right.
what had
No,
happened is that,
that's okay. So in that the eastern piece that you speak to, if no one's heard of this eastern side of things before, like where would you first direct them to start on this journey?
it's very interesting. I think there's a lot of modern stuff that we can get out there, which is semi-Eastern,
Yeah,
which can be almost a bit of a distraction and almost a detour.
right.
And there's one guy, what's his name? He was heavily into psychedelics in the 60s.
Alex
And
Gray?
he ran, sorry,
Alex Gray?
no,
No?
no, not Alex. He was Richard Alpert, and he changed his name to Ram Dass,
Right.
Ramass. And he was a psychologist, so he was very much in his left brain. And he found psychedelics, which took him out of his left brain into the right brain. But he tried to find how we could maintain that state, and went to India, did a big tour around India to try and find the answer. And ended up with one guy that he called his guru. The thing with getting anybody to start on that is very down to earth how he shares the story. He's got a
Mm.
sense of humor, so it makes it interesting, and it's more grounded and more true to Eastern philosophy than probably anything else you'll hear.
Mm. Yeah, well, that's a great breadcrumb for someone to go on this journey at Ramdas.
If they're really keen, just look up Ram Dass, Be Here Now, episode 1,
Great.
and there's over 200, might be 220 episodes or so for them to watch.
That's beautiful because when I compare about some of the modern day podcasts today, like Joe Rogan and all those guys, like they're,
Yep,
they're
yep.
very entertaining, right? But then where's the spiritual journey piece? Like where's the journey into themselves?
It's a difficult thing, John. We're a society that has a strong need to be entertained. So
Mm.
the likes of Joe Rogan and a bunch of people is, they're great and they're very entertaining, but to get the essence of, of life, basically, you need something that's not entertaining. I've got a guru in Indonesia, actually, and he's an Indian by descent, and he was born in Indonesia because his Indian parents were traveling, and he
Right.
returned back there and he's opened up an ashram. And from there, he was a great influence on my life. But still, if you go back to what this guy delivers by the name of Ram Dass, he just articulates things so well. I think I went off
Nah, you
beat
did.
there, John.
You went exactly where you needed to go. It was perfect. Perfect. It's
Sorry if
all
I didn't
perfect.
answer your question.
So sometimes when I ask a question, it can go on a tangent. I just trust that whatever I said activated the correct things for us to go on that little journey together. So in the context of your clients and the diagnosis of ADHD, um, what do you think would help people the most, other than reading about ADHD? What's the underlying human component that could help people be understanding and compassionate?
Sadly enough, or funnily enough, it's just get out of your mind.
Right.
You know, there's a real strong component at the moment. There's been studies into psychedelics, and so you go into a lot of the forums and that sort of thing, and people are microdosing on magic mushroom.
Yep.
And they're not getting high. They're not being silly. These are adults that have read a lot on these natural products. These natural plants and how they're able to make a difference in their lives. So they're saying that magic mushrooms are great for depression, ADHD, anxiety, even OCD. So you've got that influence there, which has helped. But once again, the plant medicine on its own is not enough.
Yes,
So
need that adjunct therapy. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So you need a good psychologist that's on the right page, or in my case, a mentor. I'm not a psychologist, but you need that input to create new neural pathways.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because I do see in the plant medicine communities, there's an assumption that you take the medicine and you're done, like
No,
ayahuasca or whatever it is, right? That no, you
100%.
actually need someone to guide you to help put you all those pieces together, right?
Yeah. Look, I think I've done ayahuasca about 10 times.
Yeah.
And and numerous times I can't count of the magic mushrooms. I've microdosed on it, and it's certainly made a big difference to my life.
Me
And the
too.
great news is it's now becoming legal.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was very excited to see the schedule change in Australia. So excited about that. I really do see that combination of that plant medicine, psilocybin, and the adjunct therapy, having a guided, like a therapist taking you through that journey.
So
Huge
important.
access, yeah, for like PTSD and CPTSD and all kinds of personality disorders, to be able to like really force that mind, just to shush the mind and come into the body and be aware of the environment and what's actually going on.
That's 100%, John.
Mm.
100%. Now, it's good to see this evolve. Isn't it funny? To digress a little, is that one of the biggest challenges I see in my clients is those that are battling with alcohol.
Interesting. Yeah, the alcohol came up last week for a few of my clients and my friends. What are you going to
Yeah.
say?
I was just going to say that it's one of the substances that's legalized, and yet I find it to be one of the most disruptive substances that humans are taking at this point in time, short of crystal meth or something silly like that.
Yeah, totally.
And it makes you question, why was it legalized? But we won't go down that track.
I think some people that are listening to this might actually want to go down that track and explore it. Like, alcohol is such a poison to the central nervous system and the body in general. Like,
Well, it
it messes everything, like even your
kills brain cells.
testosterone. Yeah.
Why would they legalize something that's going to kill the brain cells?
Exactly. And then make it like, especially in the culture in Australia in particular, how you were speaking before about smoking, like you're the odd one out
Yes.
smoking. Like
Yep.
with drinking, it's like, oh, you're the odd one out drinking. You all right? You want another beer? You want another this? It's like, I don't actually. I'm good. I'll just have a lemon lime bitters or something else.
Exactly. I'm the same. And look,
Mm.
I was out the other night with a friend, and I used to have my passion for different types of drinks, and I saw on the shelf a 75-year-old Glenmorangie with single malt whiskey,
Yum. Yum. Oh,
and
big whiskey, single malt for me too.
and
What's it? What's it? Belvini's mine was
oh,
used to be mine.
lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a little bit different to the Glenmorangie, but
A little bit different.
and I've got this double shot, and my friends see me and they sort of go, "What's Trevor doing?" Because they know I don't drink, and it was $28 for this one little drink, and I just supped on that. Did I get drunk or no? It was nothing. Just really enjoyed the flavour.
Yeah, I love that. I've done that too. I'll just nose it for hours. I'm like, John, you haven't drunk anything. Yeah, but it's so good. Like the
Yeah,
caramel, the flavors, everything that's in there. But yeah, I get that. And being able to trust whatever that is inside of you to the what is it? It's the not too much and not too little. It's like this the correct amount for me so I can enjoy my life. Like I'm in the human form, right? And I
yes,
want to
yes.
enjoy it.
It's interesting you mentioned that, John. I had a client probably about 3 months ago, ADHD, had a huge addiction to alcohol, had a family history of it. So his grandfather, father, and mother, both heavy users of alcohol. And he, as he went through his journey, he realised that alcohol was disruptive, and he was not able to engage with the sun properly. It was a huge impact on his life, and so he'd made up his mind that he had to drink less alcohol. Sadly enough, it didn't last that long. He's one of these people, he cannot drink at all,
Mm.
because as soon as he has one, he wants another and another and another. And so it came back to me 2 weeks ago and just taken through a couple of sessions. And he's resolved now to not drink at all. And I,
Beautiful.
I believe that he will be successful.
Yeah, beautiful, Trevor. That's amazing. Yeah, I have some clients that either are on alcohol or weed or something else,
Yep.
um, where they really do feel that addiction piece, and the shame is just locked in this shame spiral of like, now I feel this way. I know alcohol can make that feeling go away, but then afterwards I feel even more shameful of like having to use
100%.
it. And I just like it's for me when I hear them, I feel devastated that they're trapped in this cycle, and also what their potential is too. Like if they didn't drink, and if they could speak to their partners or take action on their life instead of like turning to the bottle or the pipe or whatever it is, like they'd
Yep.
have a completely different quality of life where they'd wake up full of energy, like present with themselves and be able to speak coherently. But yeah, alcohol, yeah, there's a solid piece there around why is this thing that's legal and encouraged,
So,
that really destroys whole family systems, whole cultures, right?
what does it do to families?
Totally,
You
totally.
know, it's a good idea, John. The alcohol, it's very interesting, and I suppose with any substance, and you mentioned weed before, is why do we become addicted to anything?
Mm.
Like prior to ADHD, I was in pretty much general, mentoring, and a lot of people came to me with depression, anxiety, etc. And quite often there was substance abuse tied to it, and some people just trying to get over whatever their addiction was. And I said, well, that's great, but what's causing the
Yes,
addiction?
yes,
And
yes.
to get to the of root cause of anything is essential. And then you got some long lasting results.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. If once, yeah, you need to aim for the root. Otherwise, it's symptom management, and they relapse.
100%. Yeah.
Mm,
So yeah, it's interesting, and look, you got to respect everybody's journey. Perhaps they just
absolutely.
need to suffer a bit more.
Exactly. Totally. And
Yeah,
I agree with you. Like there'll be clients that I'm encouraging to wean them off weed or switch to something else. Then they have their relationship breaks down and they go, "Oh, John, like I knew you even said this was coming to me, and I ignored it. I thought I could keep on staying in this loop and hiding it from my partner or all of that stuff." And then when they lose the person that they love or some life event where it really they're confronted with the gravity of their addiction, sometimes that's enough to push them over the edge and get the help and fulfill on the actions, which can be, even for me, I say, look, just send me a message when you feel the urge. Just send me a message. No, let me know that you're feeling this, and we can have a quick conversation around what's there for you.
that's great to hear, John. I think that, in our field, as a coach or mentor, whatever you like to call us, there's sometimes a very clinical approach to working with these people. And I don't charge per session. I actually have like a 3 monthly or 6 monthly subscription that they have, and in that they're going to probably get a session a week. But I have what I call an SOS
Oh,
service.
I
You
love
know,
that, Trevor. Well, I get
yeah,
goosebumps from it. That's so beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. So it's a matter of, hey, when you're at that moment, just like what you said, you know. I'm going to be there for you, And I said, look, if it's not there right on the moment, I'm going to make an effort to get back to you within half an hour. So that's my commitment, and the number of calls I get are minimal.
Yeah. Once that space is available for them, they
Yep,
know it's like an energetic, like there's this thing, oh, this person's in my corner, like they've got
yep,
me.
yep,
I love you mentioned the clinical piece as well, because I've had people come from me that from that world, and it was
yeah,
too clinical, it was too boxy. So like something would happen and they'd go book in a call, but it's already whatever the emotion was or whatever they need to move through is already gone. So they get in the room and it's not there for them to be present to or work through. Yeah, I love the SOS style where
yeah,
here you
yep,
are, here's the block of time that we're going to be working together. And if something comes up for you, I'm here for you. Like this,
exactly,
yeah,
100%.
it's almost like replacing that parental figure of like, oh, where's mum and dad? Like, where's my caregivers, you know?
It's funny you mentioned that, John. I made a decision when I was 17 years of age not to have children.
Mm.
And and it actually was part of the reason why my second marriage fell apart, because I stuck with that, and my second wife wanted to have children. But I look at the profile of who my ideal client is, and it's a guy between 30 and 35.
Wow.
The age a child of mine would be at the moment if I'd had children. And there's women in there, but that mostly all in that age group.
Wow,
Isn't
that's
that funny?
amazing.
So literally, I see myself as a father figure. I look at my friends. My friends are all in that age group as well. I have a few older ones and that sort of thing, but I can see the friends are quite often from dysfunctional families where their father wasn't around, or there was a divorce, and I'm replacing their father. But anyway, they're good
Yeah,
fun
wow.
people, and
I really hear that wisdom piece, right? The embodying that energy of the wisdom, which I think like if I'm um is what you told me about yourself, it really comes from that Eastern world. Like you've got that the knowing that everything is going to be okay, and you just know the puzzle pieces to give to someone to reassure them or drop them into their body or the situation to not be
mm,
all up in their head about it.
yeah, like in Taoism, they refer to the Tao, and it's just basically the essence of life. And then you got the Hindus, and they talk about Dharma, and what is your Dharma? What's your and it's all just coming together at once, and yet we don't trust it,
Yes.
and all the stories going inside the head just distract you from what is.
Yeah, and in that not being able to trust, because trust is a huge piece when you're on that spiritual journey, right? That faith piece.
Mm.
What has been if you could summarize it, what would be your main piece to gathering your trust, whatever that I know I need to trust this.
Okay, it's a very interesting but a common question, and I think we all go through a bit of a process. And I think we go through initially a trust, which is external to us, which is reliant on something external to us. And then we have faith, which is quite often referring to something that's not tangible.
Mm.
And then there's the third stage, which is what I call a knowing. And that is from a state of connection. Now, once you talk about stepping out of the left-hand side of the brain and to the right into an ethereal space, there's what they call the Akashic records, or if you're using Sanskrit, just Akasha, which is knowing. And so it's available to us all, but our minds overshadow it with all this chatter.
Mm. And if someone wanted to dial in to really develop a relationship with those records, what would you recommend?
It's really just slowing down the mindset. The initial thing, people underestimate meditation. There's a huge resurgence in yoga, and yoga in a lot of instances is now more of an exercise rather than a which was initially it's more supposed to be a practice of a preparation for meditation.
Right.
No, so yoga moves were all about slowing you down to get you ready to be able to do meditation. And the meditation was about slowing the mind to the point where the activity of the mind so low that you're mostly spending most of your time on the right hand side of your brain, and that's where the creatives come from. And they go, I don't know how I painted that. So if they don't know how they painted that painting, where did it come from?
Yeah, wow. Like they just become like, yeah, right. I really hear like this channel. They've prepared their body to be a vessel for whatever needs to come through them. And then it's just come through them onto the canvas or whatever it is, the medium. Yeah,
Yep.
right. Wow. It's like a flow state, like a complete, like a yeah, wow, like a meditative state. Oh, yeah, wow.
A friend of mine, his father's a very famous potter in Australia, and he's got a small vase there, and it's worth thousands, like $50,000 at times, and he speaks of that. He says, I don't know how I do it. And he's a Jewish guy, so he's not Eastern philosophy, but he's in that space, And I don't. The great news, John. It's one bit of great news. I don't judge people that are Christians or anything like that because, it's quite often just how it's been introduced to them. There's been times because I have a strong, I suppose, spiritual aspect to how I am, and so I get people come to me about spiritual matters, and it's sometimes just about being a better Christian.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And you find there's a real difference between someone that goes to church on Sundays and that's about it, to someone who really embodies, the teachings of Christ.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that you spoke to that too. I've got a client that came to me and I helped him become like a better Muslim.
Yep.
And he was raised in that culture and then went off to the side, like based on his family dynamic. He saw the hypocrisy in his family dynamic and then forgot that it's basically a connection between him and God. And he was allowing all of the past to get in the way. It's like, no, this is about you and God. Like you can rebuild this. Like what are the action steps that he requires of you or it requires of you? He's, I haven't been doing the prayers. I haven't been doing this. It's like, yeah, well, what would happen if you started doing that, right? And he's straight back in there.
Yeah, exactly. No, you look at that there, and even the story I told with my mother. Right in that moment, there's that connection again.
Yes.
Look, if we can just remember those few things, it makes a huge difference. And I hope that in my sharing with you today and the work that I do with my clients, I'm making that difference to people's lives.
Yeah, I reckon you are. If anybody wants to get in contact with you, Trevor, what's the best way? How can they reach you?
Look, I have a fair online presence. I have a website by the name, I think it's peaceofmindmentor.com.au. There's on Facebook, a Facebook page by the same name. There's a spiritual page by the name of the Intuitive Session. That's on Facebook and Instagram, and I post them there daily.
Yeah, beautiful. Was it the Intuitive Session?
That's correct.
And what was the name of your other website?
It was the Peace of Mind Mentor.
Peace of Mind Mentor. Peaceofmindmentor.com.au.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. So if anybody wants to check out Trevor, I highly do. Go check him out, especially if you have ADHD. That would be your speciality, yeah?
That's my speciality.
Yeah, beautiful. And get some quality of life back. Yeah. Would you say that would be your most clients walk away from you with a quality of life, an improved quality of life?
100%, John. Like that's the joy of doing what I do. Is really just seeing the difference in people's lives afterwards, and and we stay in touch. I have a little something different that I do, John. Quite often we'll get together, and last time we went out to a comedy club.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so everybody there, and they just enjoyed themselves. They talked amongst each other, and I paid for it.
Fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
I really hear you're in the community and wanting to build community.
Yeah, definitely. I think community is one of my favourite subjects, John. It's been lost in the lives that we lead now. If we create more community, I reckon that'd be absolutely awesome.
I agree. I'm a huge fan of community and the connections that they bring, like stepping away from social media, even though you and I connected over social media, but being able to meet in public, having a comedy club is great because you've got laughter, Like that's so beautiful, Trevor. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining and spending some time out of your day to converse
Thank
with
you.
me.
Thank you, John, for asking me to join you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Much love and thank you again.
My pleasure. Thank you, John.